welcome back to another week and another episode of the Sunny Side Up podcast.
Welcome. We are so excited to be back with you guys. Even though, the last couple weeks there was just a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're up and rolling.
Yep, we got it. We're
In
back
faith.
on track. Yes.
Something could happen, but, we're here.
Yeah. We might need grace over the summer. We've
Yes.
never done the Sunny Side Up in the summer.
It's true.
And summer just is a little crazier with
Tends
the
to be
schedule.
busy and yeah. So, if the odd time there's something not up or whatever, just nudge us and be like, hey, because sometimes we just need that reminder to at least let you guys know what's going on.
Right. Yeah.
'Cause I think that's where we lacked
Yes.
last week, but that's okay.
Yeah.
People were writing us being like, where's your episode? What's happening? And we're like, we didn't even update people.
I know, which we appreciate it. We're glad that you guys are
Watching.
looking forward to them coming out on Mondays. So
Yeah.
that's exciting. But we have a good episode again today. It's a bit of a heavier topic again, but something that we feel super passionate about.
Yeah.
And we think it's just important to have a conversation. This is, again, another episode where we don't have any real answers or anything to provide,
True.
but we do think that some conversations are needed and important to just have and be comfortable having so that we can normalize talking about certain things and dealing with them and not brushing it under the carpet.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good conversation. I think it's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah.
Especially within, the evangelical church world and circles. But yeah, I think it's an important one. So let's dive in.
Okay. So today we kind of, the thing that got us talking about this topic today is, I don't know if you guys have heard or not, but there's a big Christian sort of celebrity singer, Michael Tate, who a lot of things have come out in the news about him. And he's basically admitted to things, so that it's not even like hearsay or gossip, but it's things that he's actually admitted to and apologized for. But just a lot of sexual indiscretions with numerous people, from minors to other adults, and apparently this has happened over years and
Couple
years,
decades,
which is super sad. And sadly, it's not that shocking in the way that there's been a lot of that lately with different leaders in the Christian circles, with different things being exposed. So we're not really here to get too into the nitty gritty about what happened with them.
That in that particular case.
Totally. Or really anything, but more the other, I guess with kind of going on the vein of the sunny side, maybe it's not sunny side, but what can we do about it?
Yeah.
If you're on the other end of that, where maybe you're not perpetrating offenses, so you can feel it has nothing to do with me, but what could we do to make the Christian space or the Christian circles and churches safe and more how they're supposed to be, right? Where there is some integrity and there is accountability and we're not, and hopefully we can see a decline in this type of thing.
Yeah, because I think it's on the rise more and more.
Yeah.
Now more than ever, and I think it's heartbreaking because I grew up listening to DC Talk and Newsboys and I forget what movie did Newsboys put out. It was a Christian movie. God's Not Dead. There was a few of them.
Yeah.
There's another one. But it's just sad to be this is the music I grew up listening to, whatever. And it's there goes another one, fallen. And I mean, we say that it's happening more now than it ever is, and that is true. But I mean, even going back to biblical days, look at David.
Yeah.
Right? So this has been going on for years and years and years with God's people and God's chosen people and God's, not that they were called pastors back then, but you know what I mean, leaders. Yeah. And so it's it's always been a thing, but why is it more prevalent nowadays? And what can we do? Why are we always putting, pastors and worship leaders and leaders in the church in general on this hierarchy pedestal? I think that's number one. That needs to die for us to even move forward, so we stop seeing the rise and fall of so many leaders.
Yeah. I feel the combination of money and power is something that in the Christian space has become more of a thing in the past decade or two, whereas maybe even in our grandparents' time, if you were committing your life to a life of ministry or serving in the church, that was almost committing to a life of meagerness and poverty and humility because you were on the
definitely
monetary wise, you were kind of living week to week.
Right.
There wasn't a huge, there was basically no financial gain for the average pastor or
Yes.
preacher, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I know sometimes even going back to like the Catholic Church, and there's a lot of money like higher ups in that way, but I'm talking about the majority of, you know, in a small town, that preacher, and even a lot of power and influence. It wasn't the same as it is now.
Today.
So it's sort of like you're mixing, they say they have the calling, but you're mixing that with a balancing of power and sort of fame within the evangelical circles. And like lots of money. Like we're talking in some cases,
especially
millions.
I would say within the U.S. Like Canada definitely is not on that same scale, even pay-wise, but like more so like these big-wig celebrity pastors,
like
celebrity pastors, mega church, or Christian music artists. It's like, money is a huge part.
Yeah, and I think it's hard. Like, I don't know about you, because both of our ex-husbands were big into the Christian music scene, so you see a bit of it. So I don't know what you think about this, but I feel like I was sort of naive. Like, I did think that mostly, like, you know, people did have this, like, felt like they had a calling on their life and God had gifted them in this way. And it was all like pure intentions, and they just want to spread the message of God's love through music and da-da. But then my husband got like a recording contract in Nashville through a Christian record label. And as we spent more and more time there, I was like actually so brokenhearted with the shenanigans that I saw there happening. And I probably saw a fraction of what really goes on because he was just sort of up and coming. So it's not even like you're in the really big circles. But I just was shocked at some of the behavior. I just thought, sure, maybe.
Like, are these at events that you're going to, or like just like things that you would hear?
No, not really at events, because that's the thing. Everyone's like on their best behavior. It was more like the conversations around like a dinner table, or the big one was like after shows, like they would do these worship concerts or shows, and then like afterwards, I remember a specific like Christmas tour that my husband was on. And we went and like sort of visited him on a couple. We didn't do all of the stops because we had little kids then. And after the show, the whole thing is like Christmas and remembering Jesus being born and singing these songs about God and your love for God the whole night. And then afterwards, it's like, oh, let's get a bite to eat. Okay. And like you go back to the hotel restaurant, but that's really like a bar.
Right.
And then and they're drinking like to excess. And I know that the drinking is one of those touchy things. Some people think it's okay, some people don't. Regardless of if you think drinking is okay or not, drinking to be drunk where you lose like control of all of your faculties and your judgment, like that
is not okay.
I would hope everyone would agree like that is not okay, because then you're representing yourself, God, the record label, whatever, and you're not even in control of yourself because you're drunk. And they're drinking. And then I saw just even with like married men, and these are musicians who are much more known and like famous than my husband was, because he would have been the opener.
Right.
And the way they like talked to the waitress, it made me uncomfortable. I remember that night, like my husband and I we didn't get in like an argument, but we had definitely a conversation where I was concerned, and I was like, this is what's going on here? Like I was so uncomfortable, and this is not appropriate. And what is this what's happening every night? And hearing all kinds of stories of like a lot of drug use that went on too, like especially the kind of like lower, lesser drugs. Like I don't know, I just think if you're in like a regular mainstream music thing, maybe that's more, you would expect that, but
not from the Christian circle.
Right. You're thinking, isn't there supposed to be a different standard and a different set of like morals and values that you're representing? That's why you're calling yourself a Christian artist, not just a regular artist. And I know that's probably not true of everybody in Nashville or anything like that, but I was just so disappointed with how much of it I did see. And I was just so like sad and brokenhearted, because I was so naive. I really did think like everyone's here with the best of intentions and they just love God.
And you want to believe that going into any sort of Christian circle or under any sort of leader, whether it be a pastor or a speaker or whatever, to be like, oh, I really hope that they're doing this with the most purest intent.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that there's been so many different big time leaders that have, fallen. I'm just not even going to get to naming them all, but like there's lots.
A lot.
And
especially recently too.
Recently.
It's crazy.
And it's heartbreaking. And some have like, really changed their life around and like come forward. And I think that doesn't always happen, especially like, I'm just thinking of Carl Lentz off the top of my head, right? That's obviously a big one. And it's funny because I went to a color conference back in, I don't even remember, but it was like maybe 10 years ago. And I went and I remember he came out and I just did not like him. Like I was like, mark my words.
Like your spidey senses were just like,
I was like, you mark my words, something will happen at some point, something will come out. And I didn't like him. I didn't like his like egocentric, I don't even know. Okay. And then obviously come out a few years later, this big scandal and, whatever. But it's funny because now he's become one of my favorite people to listen to. I think he has an incredible podcast. And it's not often I hear in like church circles and counseling and everything that because he was caught, right? He did not come forward. And normally when that happens, you don't change.
Yeah.
Because like even counselors have said like your marriage has like a 80% or something high chance of like recovering from infidelity if they have come and confessed and like really are like brokenhearted, like I'm so sorry. In his case, he was caught. And so, I was really like upset when I first heard about it, but not shocked. And then they obviously went off the grid for a few years and now he's come back and like just I think hearing mostly his kids talk about the changes he's made and continuing to make is like, wow. But that doesn't always happen, especially when you've been caught. And so it's like Michael Tate, for example, he, I guess, sent out like a public apology or something. But I think it was after he was caught. Or did he come out, was it first that, do you know? Like,
I think it was after, I think that this is... What I've seen of him gave me such flashbacks to my ex-husband. So they've dug up, of course, like these past interviews where he would make comments like, I'm a sinner like everyone else. This one I heard, I'm the chief sinner of all. And even when my friends have known I've sinned, they've still stuck by me. But he never elaborated on what the sin was. And whoever the interviewer didn't pry and was like, what do you mean? What sin did you commit or whatever? Yeah. So I think in people's minds.
That's because they didn't have you or I doing it.
Right.
We would have dug in.
Sin, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Where, when, how, and with who?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which person?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know if people just gave him the benefit of the doubt. Like, he means that, he left something, off his taxes, or I don't know really know what they thought, right? But obviously they didn't think that. So he would make those statements, but then when all of the evidence came out and people came forward, then he did admit to the specifics of what he had done. Okay. But you're right, that was after he was caught. Right. So it was like a tricky thing.
But then I heard that he even didn't, he admitted, but then more has come out.
Oh, and that's a classic narcissist thing too. You admit some, but there's like an iceberg underneath. It's like that Titanic iceberg, right? You're like, there's so much. And I think too with him, like it was over so many years and so many decades, victims, that you're kind of like, okay, yes, mistakes happen, but then a mistake happening and predatory behavior, that's a separate thing, right? And the thing that was so sad is like how many people, like his bandmates, and there was like a saying that it was like the worst kept secret in Nashville. Like so many people knew about it for years and years. And because of who he was and the influence that he had, they didn't speak. And I listened to an interview with one of his like victims or whatever. And they were saying that the thing that was tricky was because he was kind of at the top of the Christian music scene and he was taking special interest in certain people. And then and they thought, oh, he's just a nice guy. Then he would perpetrate some sort of inappropriate sexual advance to them. And then they would feel like they couldn't say anything after because they didn't want to be like blackballed in the industry, or they didn't want to go against like Michael Tate because and you're just like.
So that goes right into like that power.
100%. And you're thinking, this is the church community. what kind of community have we created where people think that's the way it operates? Like, if I speak up against something that's been done to me that's inappropriate and actually criminal in some cases, that will affect my whole career and dreams and livelihood, so I have to be quiet. Like, and I think that's, to me, why I want to have these conversations, because that can't be.
No, it can't.
If that's the way that it is in mainstream music, that's one thing. It's still wrong, but we have got to do better as Christians and people who say that we're choosing to live a life at a higher standard. Right? But to allow that and to create a culture of permitting like abuse, permitting predatory behavior, covering it up. That's crazy.
And if these people, like, I didn't realize that, you know, people knew and like kept a secret. And I feel like, you know, they need to be held accountable just as much. Like, how do you, as a believer and as somebody who, you know, walks in the light, we talk a lot in the church world about walking in the light. It's like, come on. Like, it's also like, be sure your sins will find you out. And if we are allowing it, I feel like we're just as at fault. And it's
like, to me, I'm so curious about what exactly is it? Like, obviously, I think for them, like his other bandmates that knew, right? Like, you're talking probably millions of dollars are on the line if something happens to their band's reputation. So then you're willing to hide it. Probably, like, you want to keep power and control of like a respect in the industry. And then I don't even know what other motivating factors there would be, but even that, what happens to your heart if you get to the place where money and power and fame trumps protecting innocent people from being victimized? Like, that to me is where we have to have this like heart check conversation where you're like, this has gone too far.
It's not cancel culture. I don't like that word. I think it's more like a heart check culture. Like, you're right. Like, that is so good, because it's so true. It's like, when did we care so much more about people's charisma than their character?
Totally.
But I think that's what's happening in the church world is we're like, oh, but they're so like charismatic. I just even think of your ex-husband. I'm like, oh, everyone loved him, right? Like, we've talked about in other episodes. He had it. Like, that charisma, that charm, that whatever. So like, he was very well liked and everyone loved him. But like, I'm sure that there were people out there. I know that there were people out there.
Me too.
That saw past it. And were like, but like, there's something about his character that's not fully lining up.
Well, even in my case, I've thought of this because at the time I didn't even really think of it as the red flag I think now. But when my ex-husband, because this behavior had happened many times. And like, did any one person really ask a lot of questions to dig deep? No. I think everyone was kind of like, la, 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 la. Like, we didn't want to know anything more than we have to know. Because like, they didn't want to deal with it. But like, at a number of different churches that he worked at, there were times when he would have to travel for his music. And it was known by pastors, by leaders, that he would have to travel with a travel buddy. Like, another man would go with him, because it was like he couldn't be trusted on his own. Like, and it was supposed to be like an effort to help keep him from cheating or keep him from acting in a destructive way when he was out of the country touring with his music. And at the time, like, and I was kind of sold at like, we're going to have him have a travel buddy and, you know, for his own safety. And then I was kind of like, okay, that's a good idea. Like, in my head thinking almost someone to kind of babysit his behavior. But now on the other side of it, I'm just like, wait 1 minute. Like, there's nothing wrong with pastors traveling in groups. I think that's a good idea. But if you have to literally send this man with a babysitter, because you know that without one, the likelihood of him cheating or doing drugs or drinking or something is basically almost guaranteed. Why is he in that position in the first place?
Why are we allowing that? So I'm just thinking, because I'm like, the craziest thing is, yes, in the church world, it would be very much like, like you bring somebody with you for like accountability, right? That word would get thrown around. Bring somebody for accountability. And though I do think that there is some wisdom in that, it's like,
but if someone needs it, where if it's like, oh, he really can't go without because he will absolutely cheat. It's like,
and also, like, but why don't we do that with our Christian husbands that travel for business? That would never be a thing. Like, my husband travels all the time. It is not a thought in my mind oh, well, we're going to hire somebody to come with you?
Right.
Like,
because if we don't, you will probably cheat on Leah.
Yeah. Like, to me, I'm like,
that's such a good point.
Right? Like,
see, I've never even thought of that.
Right.
Like,
but like,
such
we're doing it in the Christian circle to be like, oh, well, it's above approach, or it's wisdom.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but then in the good Christian men out there that travel for business, why aren't they doing it then?
Right.
Like, to me, it's just, it's a weird thing.
And and I'm not saying that it's, I get this traveling and safety, and I get
there's
that.
accountability for sure.
But you're right. It's weird. It's, I guess for me, the line is like, if you think we have to put this person with a travel buddy, or they're going to probably do X, Y, or Z, they should never be in that position.
Yeah, they should never have that
in
platform.
the first place,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You should say like, yeah, it'd be great for him to have a travel buddy, but if he doesn't, we're
fine.
confident he's fine.
Yeah.
But we're going to give him one anyways. That's one thing. But to be like, well, part of our plan for restoration for him is to give him a travel buddy because then someone can babysit him. But then I would hear stories about how my ex-husband would ditch these travel buddies anyways and go and cheat anyways. Like he would tell them, oh, I have a meeting that is confidential. You can't be in it. I'll drop you off at this coffee shop. I'll meet you later. And then he would go, right? So it's not even, it was like a false sense of security anyways.
Yeah. And the moment that we're putting somebody in a position where they do need that travel buddy.
Right.
It's like they should, like, just like you said, they should not be in that position.
Yeah.
Like, I get restoration. Like, I am not one to just cancel culture people. Like, I do believe in second chances. I do believe in that. But it's like, at what point, though, do you say, no, it's time to take a step down and not be given this platform or this pedestal? Like, I remember being, just a couple years back, I went to a Jesus Image conference in Florida, in Orlando, and I remember being there, and it was Francis Chan, who, there's been a lot of different things about him over the years, not like scandals or anything, just like his ups and downs with his faith journey. I actually really love him. And he had said something. He got up on the stage and started like just weeping and just said, this stage that we have created in the church world and the church culture is so dangerous. And he said, there is not a day that goes by that before I come up here, I am in holy reverence to the Lord before I come up. Because he's like, what comes with this stage is pride, is power, is sin. And if you think that you're immune to any of those, you've already failed. And it was just such an eye-opener for him to just go up and be like so broken about it and be like, this is holy ground and it is dangerous ground. And you always have to be in check of your pride and where it sits because it does come with such power.
Yeah. And if he's in those circles, he's probably hearing a lot of these stories, right? So he knows firsthand what's going on and the image that's being presented to people and then what's actually happening behind the scenes. And I think it's like, that's such a good point. It's like just that check of like accountability and recognizing that there is like a power and control that's tempting to people.
Yeah.
And it can be tempting for all different things, not even just cheating, but just becoming manipulative and controlling or becoming, money obsessed or whatever, right? And I think that there's so many churches, especially in North America now, that really lack real accountability. Yeah. Like the amount of churches that I've heard of or seen, I know there's some big ones in the US I'm even thinking of where, gone are the days of like a traditional board with accountability where the pastor kind of submits to the board. Now it's like these celebrity pastors start these mega churches and they're the boss and they're on top. And then sure, because even for financial tax purposes, you legally have to have a governing board. They'll select a board, but half of them are like their friends or their buddies or just people that they know or like-minded. So there's no real accountability there sometimes. And then the churches just get out of control because you have this one man who, is operating in a way that is amoral, but who's going to step up and say something to him? Everyone's afraid. And so there's no accountability for pastors, for churches, and people are giving hundreds, thousands, sometimes in these mega churches, millions of dollars a year to these ministries that are completely corrupt.
So how do we change that though? Like, I'm thinking about it and I'm like, as you're speaking, I'm like, okay, but like, how do we change the narrative in the church so that or how do we change so that when a leader's there, like because here's the deal. You and I are just as guilty as putting these pastors up on pedestals.
Yeah.
Like when you've been raised in the church your whole life, it's like, there is something to be said about honor.
Yeah.
And I believe that's very important.
Yeah.
But it is very different than like, you're perfect or you're amazing or you're whatever. So it's like, how can we flip the narrative, or what can we be doing? And I think the biggest thing would be like, if you know of something or there's a sin or there's something going on, open up and talk about it. Like, but then on the flip side, you might be shut down.
Well, and then that's the thing. I think open up and talk about it. And then depending on how you're received, so I think I've mentioned this before, but one time when I was in counseling, one of the things the counselor told me about some of the shenanigans going on with my ex-husband is he said, people who are controlling, manipulative, abusive, predators, they are prolific liars.
Right.
Like you would think, I don't know, you will not know. These people can lie so well, and you can't even tell. And so he would always say to me, believe the behavior.
Right.
Don't believe what they say to you, believe the behavior.
Yeah.
Right? So if you were to ask or bring up something and the reaction, the behavior is really hostile, negative, offended, defensive, that should be a red flag for you.
Right.
Not that you have to leave in that minute, but just like hold that in your mind and because I even had a similar situation with that with a church that I was involved with, and there was some nominations being done for essentially what would be the board, like the highest governing body of the church. And that's supposed to be a position for people who are respected, are known to have high integrity, whatever, like not perfect, but because these people are the leaders of the church. They're kind of safeguarding the pastors and whatever. There was nominations being brought in. There was a name on the list of nominations of a man who I didn't really know personally. I knew who he was, but I didn't know him. But someone had said to me in almost like a passing comment once, hey, there's some concerning things about this man. Some of them were of a sexual nature. It happened years ago, but I don't ever think it was resolved. Just a heads up, like if he's ever like volunteering or whatever, just really look into that. It was like nothing more than that. I said, okay, that's fine. Jeez. Then he's on this list. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, so I mentioned it in our group of pastors. I mentioned it to our pastor and I was very honest about it. I just said like, I don't know anything more than this. This is what I was told. Someone maybe should look into it, just whatever. So then later the pastor came to me, said, where did you hear this information? I told him the person that told me. I phoned that person and said, hey, our pastors just went to look into this. They're making some decisions. Are you good with that? She was like, 100%. Tell him to call me, talk to me. I guess they had a conversation. After that conversation, the pastor came back to me and said, I looked into it and there are some things that don't really add up to what I thought had happened. And there does seem to be some things that are unresolved. So, not to say this person's a bad person or written off or whatever, but definitely more investigation needs to happen before we consider putting him in a super high place of like authority and leadership. And he said, his name's going to come off the list for now. Okay, great.
Amazing.
Great. I don't think anything else of it. I'm like, that's fine.
That's great. That means he's doing his job.
Totally. And then a little bit later, we had like a big meeting with all the members where people are going to get voted into these positions.
Okay.
And at the meeting, in real time, as the meeting's going, I'm just scanning down the list and then, it catches my eye that his name is still on the list. And my heart just sank.
After the pastor said that
he was going to take him off the list because he himself was concerned. And so I was super confused. I was like, this is weird, but it's the voting. It was happening. Like the chair of the meeting, they're going on, they're leading, and in my heart's racing. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what
why is this?
What do I do? What's going on? But there's no time now to ask any questions. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe it's a mistake. But they do a vote, and they say, anyone who's voting yes to this, like put your hand up. So obviously, I did not. I could not in good conscience.
Oh, so they literally went through with it. They said his name.
Yeah,
and the pastor's there.
Yeah,
and he's saying nothing.
And everybody else who'd talked around the stuff like about the concern said nothing. And so I just thought, I'm just not going to vote then. So everybody votes yes. Then the chair says, anyone who is opposed, put your hand up. I didn't realize that. And I'm sitting there like, no.
I think I would have thrown up.
I did. When you're going to cry and it's like right there and you're trying to hold it in, That's how I felt. And then, so I put my hand up and I looked around. I'm like, please let me not be the only one. I didn't see anybody else. I think I might have been the only one with my hand up. Then there's like this awkward whatever, and then the meeting,
and the pastor is in this room, the same pastor.
So then it goes through too, like, so then he gets on because this majority vote.
So did anyone say anything to you? No,
I don't. I
you just
got
raised
up.
your hand.
Yeah, and I just raised my hand to the no because they asked.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying not to cry. I'm like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. It's then as soon as the meeting was over, which was shortly thereafter, I got up and I booked it out to my car because I thought I'm going to start to cry and I didn't want anyone to see me cry. I got in my car and I bawled like all the way home. I think of so many things. Like I was so confused. I felt embarrassed.
Yeah.
That I kind of was like pointed out like that, not on purpose, but just by nature of how that went down.
Yeah.
I felt a little bit betrayed. Like what the heck happened? I thought we had this conversation. I was confused. And then I got a text from the pastor. Basically, the tone of the text seemed frustrated. I mean, you never obviously know after a text, but it read frustrated, basically saying, you know, I wish if you had an issue with something, you would tell me before the meeting and like basically kind of embarrass me in front of it. That's what I'm thinking. I was like, what? That's exactly what I did. The last I heard from you, like
you were taking his name off the list.
Right. And then we show up at the meeting. I was like, wait, what? Wow. So then I didn't actually reply to that text because
what are you going to say?
Well, and it was just like not the nicest way that he wrote it. And to me, I almost felt bad for him. And I thought, you know what? The heat of the moment, tomorrow he's probably gonna wake up and be embarrassed, and I don't want to embarrass him more. I'm not going to talk to him when he's in this state where he's upset.
Give it like 24 hours. Yeah.
So I didn't, and then the next day it was like, oh, well, we're going to all meet together as like a leadership staff and like we'll discuss it there. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm going into the meeting again thinking, I'm feeling sorry for him, thinking, oh, that was like a lot, and like must have been some mistake, and maybe he forgot to communicate.
You always love to give the people the benefit of the doubt.
Well, because I'm just, because I know this, I like him. I think he's a good person.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, he's probably feeling embarrassed. Yeah. Like this is going to be maybe an embarrassing conversation. Yeah. But when we got there, like he was still pretty, I don't know if I should use the word hostile. Maybe that's dramatic, but he definitely wasn't like remorseful and embarrassed. I'll say that. Like he was like
upset with you.
He was angry at me. Yeah. And then there was like kind of like a lot of accusations thrown around about me betraying him and doing that in front. And I'm just sitting there like thinking, I'm sorry. I don't even see the gray area.
Yeah. There's no gray
This
hair.
was wrong. Like, and then thankfully what had happened too was the night before. So when that happened, the night before we went in for this meeting, after the voting meeting, when everything went bad, as I'm thinking about it, because I'm giving the benefit of the doubt in my head, then all of a sudden I think, oh my goodness, maybe there was a conversation, maybe everything was worked out, and he just forgot to communicate that to me. Yeah. So maybe it's actually fine that this person's now on this
like
team.
maybe it was a misunderstanding.
Maybe it's a misunderstanding. And then I'm feeling bad. I'm like, oh, I bet that's what happened. So then I thought, okay, I'm just going to, because this time I will investigate. I'll ask the questions. I'd rather know. I'm not going to. So I reached out to the woman who was directly involved, the person who was bringing the accusation against this man, who also, I don't know her super well either. Right. And I just reached out to her and I said, listen, I just need to ask you 2 questions and then we don't have to talk about this anymore. Yeah. And I just said, number 1, has this situation been resolved in any way with the man? Like since the last time it was brought up that you had mentioned a concern about him, has anything? And she said no. And I said, okay, has the second question is, has anyone from our leadership team or pastors or anyone reached out to you since you last brought this up to try and rectify it or make it better or talk to you about it or ask you questions or investigate it? She said no. And I was like, okay, so then there's no misunderstanding. So then I went into that next meeting the next day knowing that. And even in the meeting, there was like raised voices. You know, there came the point I was just crying because I felt kind of like attacked and accused. And I'm sitting there thinking,
wait a minute, I'm just bringing something to light.
Well, and I'm just like, and I even tried to say, I'm trying to help everybody. Like, I'm trying to help him because he shouldn't be maybe in this position of leadership if he has this unresolved issue from years back. Yeah. I'm trying to protect our congregation of this woman or her friends or people that have known this has happened, and they're going to feel unsafe with him in that leadership. I'm trying to protect you as the lead pastor team to not have like a scandal come out, right? Like there's so many reasons why we can't just brush this under the rug. But it got really kind of out of control and messy. And
so what ended up happening?
Well, it ended up happening that like...
Did he go on to be a board member?
No, because what's really I thought was so telling too. So this man that this happened with, I never even really had a conversation. Like I don't know him.
Wow.
So he wouldn't know what I know or don't know or anything. And he ended up writing an email to the pastor, I guess, recusing himself, saying, I'm pretty sure the reason that Pam would have voted no, I saw her as the only person who put her hand up.
Because they can see.
Yeah, because
he was in the meeting.
Yeah.
This man was in the meeting.
Yes. And so that's the thing. I had to vote against him in front of him. It was awful. And I didn't want to. Like, I don't want to embarrass him, anybody. I literally cried. Like,
So
but he
sent an email.
Yeah, saying like he was basically recusing himself because he said, I'm pretty sure the reason she voted no is because
of
probably
this incident?
that she knows about this or whatever and is uncomfortable. And I don't want to.
So he even admitted it.
In a way. And so then, and then he just said, I'm going to take my name out so that I don't cause any, which I think was the right thing to do for sure.
After that, did the pastor come to you and apologize and be like, I'm so sorry?
Not really. Like, I actually think that our relationship was never really the same after. Wow. Like, I think he felt like it was a personal betrayal to him, which I still to this day don't really understand. It's like, I came to you. Like, the reason, because I came to you. Yeah. The last we spoke, you told me you had concerns and you weren't going to, and then I never heard again. Like, I don't know how this is a gray area at all, but and then I do feel like I felt, and this is my own personal opinion, I don't know, but the sort of relationship never recovered. And then there was always this tension between us. And I felt like he was always just annoyed with me or short with me from there on out. And it was just unfortunate because I was like, I'm literally trying to help you, him. I'm trying to keep the congregation safe. Like, I'm trying to do the right thing and to speak up. But I was like, wow, this is like a firsthand experience with what happens. And no wonder people don't speak up. Because for me, it's like, I will do that. I'll speak up and say that. And if that's what's going to happen and I'm going to be made the bad guy.
But I'm sure it made you hesitate to be like, well, what's the point? Like, I'm sure you'll still do it, but you know what I mean? Like,
well, and it made me not feel safe in a way that I'm like, what else are you hiding? Like, if you would have, so if I never said anything, you would have just put this man in this position with no, like, making sure that past thing is dealt with. And like, do you know what I'm saying? So you're putting him in a position over other vulnerable people when he's not ready to do that because there hasn't been a full path to restoration and reconciliation. So if you do that with him, what else? I just happened to know about that because the woman had told me about it.
Told you,
Has she not, I wouldn't have even known. And then it makes you think, well, how many other things do you know that are making people in a vulnerable state or putting someone in leadership who has no business doing that? Yeah. But we just don't know about it. So that's why I'm like, you have to speak up, and that can't be wrong. It can't make you the bad guy. It can't be you betraying. To ask questions. That's the thing. And I'll say,
ask questions
from my heart, like even after that, I had a hard time moving past it. Not in that forgiveness or anything. It wasn't that. It was the trust.
Right.
Then I looked at that whole leadership team a bit differently, going, oh, you guys kind of make me nervous. Yeah. Because how could you not be willing to say something? Like, that was not even like questionable. Like, it was to me, it was like, it was so obviously inappropriate. Yeah. But you know, and that's just in like a little church, a little situation. And these big mega churches, of course, people, and that's the thing, people do come forward and they're shut down. And they're driven out of churches, and they're gaslit, and the narrative is flipped that they're the bad one. They're gossiping. They're causing trouble. If you know of something inappropriate and you speak out, that is not gossip. No. We have got to stop lying to the church body, saying, well, you shouldn't say that. It's gossip. Yeah. No, it's not. It's
especially if you come forward to the right person.
Yes. Like leadership.
Yes. Like, that is not gossip. Like, if you're talking about it with a bunch of your friends, okay, no.
Yeah.
But like, if you come forward,
Yeah.
it's actually biblical.
There's that.
Like,
there is, I know, right? It's
If you have odds against your brother, try to work it out with them. And then if that doesn't work, go to leadership.
And if your leadership responds in a way where they're upset at you for not covering for something inappropriate, be very careful. Seriously, right? Like, be very careful, because if it's happening in this situation, it's probably happened in the past, and it's likely to happen in the future. You want to be at a church where you could at least have a conversation.
Absolutely.
And it's like, let's look into that. Like, let me look into that, and let me make sure that before I put anyone in a position of power and authority over children, women, people who've been abused, people who are vulnerable, before we do that, we're going to make sure that we do our due diligence. And then, do people still get through the cracks and things happen? Of course. But at least let's start with doing due diligence and saying some people aren't qualified to be in a position of leadership because of decisions they've made. That's not unloving.
There is consequences to sin.
Boundaries.
Yes. Like, and there's consequences, and there's, boundaries, but like, you know, you and I were just talking off camera for a little bit just about the difference between sin. And like, different sin, like, sin is a sin, absolutely. But like, what did you say about God? You said something.
It's like, well, I just bothered when people are like, well, sin is sin and nobody's perfect. Yes, in the way that all sin grieves God's heart, right? Like,
absolutely.
Whether you, like, you know, steal a piece of gum from a store, or someone is murdered, like, all of that breaks God's heart.
And sin means missing the mark. Like,
totally.
Really, that's what it comes down to.
Like, and you know, you're knowingly doing something that's wrong. Like, that, all of it breaks God's heart. Yes, that is true. Every bit of it. However, if you steal a pack of gum and if you murder someone, the consequences, the boundaries, the punishments, the restrictions on your life moving forward to keep others safe is not the same. And it shouldn't be. And if someone in leadership tries to gaslight you and make you think that because no one's perfect and sin is sin, that someone who abuses minors or vulnerable people should still, as long as they say sorry, that they should have full reign and access to those same type of people, that's crazy. No, you don't. There's a boundary and a consequence for your sin. You can serve in other ways.
And they would never say that they would do that. Here's the thing, right? Because it's like, even with the Michael Tate thing, you know, it's like, oh, well, no, now that we know, like, he's removed from everything. Like, now that the scandal blew up.
Or now, it's more likely now that you know. Because they've known this whole time. And they did nothing.
Especially when you said that they've all known for all these years. So, but that's the area where you're like, wait a minute, this is dangerous.
It's so dangerous.
The fact that, like, he's gone all these years, and now, okay, well, now we're going to remove you, and now you're done, and now whatever. But like, you could have done this years ago and maybe saved 25 more victims. Like,
and if you're doing it, like, because there's always this mixed up weird thing of like, well, that person deserves love and forgiveness and grace too. Sure, but is it loving? Like, if somebody, like in his case, he's in a position where he's having a problem with being appropriate sexually with people, even minors. So he's doing things that are illegal.
Was 13.
So that's illegal. Highly, you're going to go to jail for that. And not to mention all the harm that's caused to the victims. But even if you're going from the argument, I'm going to love the sinner, the person committing the thing. Is that loving? To allow them to keep doing something that's hurting others, hurting themselves, getting them in legal trouble, and ruining a reputation, ruining your legacy. Like, is that loving to just stand by and actually take cover for them? Like, we're going to protect you so you can keep perpetrating this.
And also, again, let's read the Bible. And a loving God disciplines his children. There is discipline. Like, honestly, I think that, like, that's what it comes down to, is we need to get back into the Word of God. We need to get back into biblical theology. And stay there. There's no, like, your opinion, my opinion, when there's the Word of God in front of us. Like, that is, like, life. That is everything. That is the breathing, living Word of God. So if we can't go to that and we're just going to give our opinions on things, well, no. Like, that's, to me, that is the biggest thing, is like, go to the Bible, go to biblically speaking. Like, yes, like, okay, look at women back in the day for having an adultery. They would be stoned to death. And yes, Jesus is like, you know, for those of without
Sin cast the first stone.
Yes, cast the first stone. Clearly, I'm you know what I mean? And so like God does protect
there
the
is
adulterer.
grace.
There is grace.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it's like, but that's because she turned from her ways. Like she fell at the feet of Jesus and was like, forgive me, Father.
Yeah.
So again, it's that like remorse, that being caught, that like, I'm so sorry, and actually turning away. Well, no, with his case, he didn't turn, like it was years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
Decades, 2 decades.
Yeah. And people who claim to love him and be his friend ran cover for him while obviously he's struggling and suffering. That's not a normal, healthy thing to be engaging in.
You want to get them help,
right?
Not cover for them.
Totally.
Like if you have a friend that is going through something, any sort of addiction or whatever, I would urge you to be like, hey, we love you enough.
Yes.
To say like, this is not okay.
Exactly.
Like you need help, whether it be an addiction to drugs, sexual stuff, alcohol, whatever the addiction is. Like even like nowadays it's gaming, it's different things. Like an addiction is an addiction is an addiction.
Yeah.
Certain ones have different consequences, same thing. Yeah. But it's like, as a friend, don't be covering for them.
No.
You're not doing them any good.
No.
You want to get them help. You want to see them better. Like, you know, like if you were addicted to something, I'd be like, okay, what can I do to help you get better? Like, doesn't mean rehab, doesn't mean whatever. Like, I don't know. It's just, it's so sad to me.
It's so true. Yeah. That's the thing. There's just the lack of like real accountability in churches. Like you have all these systems, these boards or these travel buddies or whoever that are set up to, be kind of like a safeguard, except those people don't even take their job seriously. They're scared to ask questions. They're scared to stand up. So what good are you? Right. And I was thinking about it, like, it's funny when I was reading one of the things on the Michael Tate thing, I was thinking about how so much of this does come to this lack of accountability and everything. Like even for his case, like record labels, for sure they knew things, they'd heard rumors. You're putting your money and your time and your reputation behind this man. Sit him down, have a conversation. Say, like, do some investigating. Sit down with the people that were like the victims. Investigate. Did this really happen? Like, you know, but people don't want to because it's uncomfortable and it's hard. And I was thinking, and I feel like you could relate to this because you guys are boaters, but
oh boy,
I was thinking about how like when your kids are little, and they like no one likes to wear a life jacket. It's uncomfortable. It's hot. It chokes you in the neck. You don't want to have it on. It's so uncomfortable. But what if we say as parents, this is what's going to keep you safe. You have it on because it's unsafe for you. But I'll tell you, like you're on a boat and you hit a rocky waters, boy, and you get tossed in that sea or the ocean. You're pretty happy you have that life jacket on because it will save your life. So all of the uncomfortableness of sitting with it on all day, when the time came, it saved your life. And accountability is the same thing. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to come and bring an accusation against someone. It's uncomfortable to sit in a meeting and be the only person to raise your hand and say, I'm uncomfortable with this. It's uncomfortable to go head to head with someone or to face backlash or people to be angry at you. It's uncomfortable, but guess what? In the end,
it saves somebody.
That's what saves everyone. It saves like God's reputation. Vulnerable people from getting hurt. Your church, the pastor, the leadership. And I think leadership has to stop being so afraid of people who will say, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this. Are you sure about that? Or let's double check this. Whether it's an accusation or a small thing, like what churches are deciding to do or what direction they're going in.
They need to stop being afraid of men's opinion and be more concerned about God's opinion.
Totally.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. And if you have a structure in place where like the kind of check of God's thing comes from a man's voice of people around you, listen. And just be like, let me hear what you're saying. And if you don't like it, like maybe someone comes to you in an overly emotional way because it's upsetting to them. Maybe someone's aggressive. Maybe someone's more blunt. It doesn't, like if you don't have the maturity to receive information, you have no business being in that leadership spot because you're then a danger to yourself and everyone else. Because your lack of emotional maturity and ability to receive correction from people around you to protect, like I can guarantee you many people came forward about Michael Tate to record producers, to bandmates, to whoever, and they would not receive that.
It's I was listening to something even the other day saying this has been an ongoing investigation for 2.5 years.
It's just the investigation was 2 years. Yeah, it's
so
like 10 years.
He's been
the
still,
allegations go back.
Singing in stadiums, and people are paying to see him as a Christian artist. And just the investigation has been going on for 2.5 years. So that means people have known for 2.5 years and still put him in that leadership position and didn't remove him.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
That's a huge problem. And that's the thing. Like,
we
might think, like, oh, well, we're not going to perpetrate XYZ. Okay, but if you're part of the church in general, we all have a responsibility to speak up and to pay attention.
Yeah.
When you hear or see something weird, don't be like, oh, I don't want to get involved.
Yeah.
You are involved. This is your church.
Yeah.
This is your community.
Yeah.
This is your God that's represented.
Yeah.
Like, as humans, we're the physical representation of Jesus, because Jesus isn't here in physical body.
Yeah.
And so to other people, the closest connection they have is people in the church. And if you're hurting people, you're doing it, you're actually making God have a bad reputation.
Absolutely.
And then that's on you.
Because that's what it comes down to, too, is that this is, it's like God will build his church and the gates of hell will not prevail, right? Mm-hmm. Like, this is God's church. Like, Jesus is the only way. Like, he is the guiding light. And if we can't follow that, I mean, shame on us. Because guess what? Jesus doesn't need a stage.
No.
He doesn't need a stadium.
No.
Jesus will just come as a lowly baby in a manger.
Yeah.
He doesn't need all that. He doesn't need the lights. He doesn't need the show. That's not what he needs.
And I've heard that there was a pastor, I think it was like Robert Morris, who was this big pastor in the States, and he just got
a whole another big scandal.
And I remember hearing somebody say something, it made me cringe, in defense of him, saying something along the lines of, yeah, but look at all the good work he did. And look at the way that God was able to use him, even though he'd kept this secret of being basically a pedophile, right? And to me, I was just like, that is so messed up to say that. Do you honestly think so little of God? You really think that God needed him to be on a stage and have this mega platform in order to move? Why would we be? God doesn't need to put a pedophile in front of people to do his work. Like, if you believe that, you don't.
Well,
think
and that
God's
was just
very big.
that was humanness that came in there. That was Robert's humanness. That came into there. Can God use any situation for good?
100%.
Yes. Like that I believe that there could be many lives that he touched and saved in the process. Yes. But no, like, his humanness led to this fault. Like, God didn't need to put him in that place. These people could have come to God in any other way. So, like,
and that's not a reason to keep somebody in a position to be like, well, look at all the good they're doing. So we know that they're doing XYZ behind the scenes, but they're also doing all this good, so it kind of balances out. That's where I'm like, no, that's crazy. You don't do that. Like, and this is the thing too. Like, you and I talked about this off camera too, but I think that what would be interesting is a lot of these people, these Christian music celebrities, these Christian celebrity pastors, if you took away their platform and their fame and their power and influence and their money, would they still do it? Would they still do it? And if the answer is no, they shouldn't be doing it now. Like, if you're doing it because you enjoy having all this influence and you like all this money, and then you have no business doing it. And you're the first person who is susceptible to falling.
Like, if you weren't doing it in a 10,000 person stadium, would you do it to a 100 person congregation?
Totally. Would you go down to like a low income park area and sit down and talk to 5 kids? The same way, for no money, and no one knows. There's no cameras, there's no social media, no one knows you're doing it. If you wouldn't, then
100%.
Where are your
And
motives?
that's where I think a lot of these, these pastors and these celebrity pastors and big congregation of megachurches end up failing, is because
it just catches up with you.
And it just a lot of them blew up quickly. And I think they just don't know what to do with it all. And that is why, yes, accountability is so important.
And it's like what you were saying about Francis Chan, because if you have a ministry that blows up quick, wow, wouldn't it be so hard to actually constantly like attribute that to God and not to like, well, we're doing this, or it's because I'm charismatic, or I'm smart, or people want to hear me.
Yeah.
Right?
So this is literally I just listened to like another podcast with Francis Chan on it. And I think it was Francis Chan and Lecrae. And I'm pretty sure, I don't think I'm messing that up, but yeah, I think it was. And he was just saying like, he went from, like big time church, like big time mega church. And then he left the church, like that world, and started like tiny little small group churches, because he realized he got to the point that he himself was like, almost like, I did this. I don't need God.
Wow.
Like this was me. Like he got to the point where he literally said in this podcast, I'm going to link it. We'll try to link it in our bio, because I think it was a great episode. But pretty much he got to the point where he was like, I think I could draw more crowds than Jesus himself.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that's when he was like, I'm in a bad place. Yeah. And then he stepped back and is like doing these little tiny small group. And he's now just starting to speak again at conferences. But he took a hiatus for quite some time. Now, there was never a scandal or anything, because again, I think, thank God.
Yeah, maybe just in time.
Just in time.
Right?
Because for him to admit that he was like, I could draw more crowds than Jesus, that is a dangerous place to be. So now he's coming, back through. So that is another great episode. We'll link it, because I think it's an incredible one given what we're talking about. But like, wow. Like, and for him, like, thank you, Jesus, that you humbled him enough to be like, I'm going to remove you, or he removed himself before the next big scandal.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to be praying for our leaders.
Yeah. It's so
praying
true.
for our pastors.
Yeah.
Praying for anybody in any sort of influential position.
Yeah. And speaking up.
Yeah.
Be brave.
Yeah.
If you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Go to somebody.
Yeah.
And if they shut you down, go to somebody else. If you've been hurt, if you've been perpetrated, if you've been wronged, like, it's actually a good thing to speak up, and in a healthy place will receive it and handle it well.
Yeah.
And if they're not healthy, then probably you don't want to be there anyways, where you have to keep everyone's dirty secrets in order to stay in favor of the leadership. That's
right.
crazy, right?
That's right.
And
you want to be able to speak up, because then like good could hopefully come of it. Like, you don't want to just like be stuck. Like Francis Chan, I'm just thinking like, thank God that it wasn't that fallout, and there was like a beautiful side to it. You don't want to be stuck in a place where you're under leadership where it's scandal after scandal after scandal.
No. Or cover up after cover up, where the scandals don't even reach your ears,
because it's just being covered.
Right. Until one day it's just, they've shoved too many things under the carpet and it just explodes, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it would be a volcano at that point.
Yeah. And it's like, you have to, I also think the thing is too, you have to use discernment, because leaders and pastors, there are great ones. I'm not saying that, but in a church where maybe there's been some murmurings of things that are being kept secret, you have to be careful, because if you just believe whatever that pastor says, like, sometimes things are dishonest, right? That's how things are covered. And it's funny, because on one of the podcasts I was listening to, where they were talking about the Robert Morris cover-up, and somebody who was like a right-hand man to him, that they kind of found out later, he knew and covered. And he was trying to explain himself and trying to say like he didn't know, which whatever. But it was funny, because something I noticed, and I only noticed this because of training I've had in therapy. He said, trust me, I'm trustworthy, and you can trust me, and I want to be trustworthy, and I want to tell you the truth. And he said the word trust, truth, trustworthy somehow probably 25 times in his thing. And I remember in therapy, when they were trying to teach me about, like in my ex-husband's case, determining like lies from the truth, because that's very hard to tell sometimes. And I remember him saying to me, the therapist, if somebody tells you something about their self over and over and over, it's almost always guaranteed to be a lie, because the truth, you only need to say it once, or better yet, you don't say it at all. Other people say it about you.
Right.
If you're saying, I'm so trustworthy, I tell the truth, trust me, you can trust me, that's probably a lie.
Right.
People should just know from your character and their past experience with you, and they should say that about you. Or if pastors are like, I'm so humble, or I have humility and I'm humble and I come to you humbly. You said it too many times.
Yeah.
You don't need to tell me how humble you
Yeah.
are. I should feel that you're humble by the way you speak to me, by the way you speak to others, by your emails, your texts, your messages, your behind the scenes work, or same thing, if you're trustworthy, if you're honest, or whatever the messages they're telling you, you should already have that opinion of them without them ever having to say it. And if they're saying it about themselves over and over and over, that should be like an immediate red flag where you go, something's not right here. And you can feel that way without having all the pieces together.
Absolutely.
Like you can say to yourself, something's not right about this explanation I'm being given. If you do go for help or you do and someone's the way you're talked to, something's not right. I'm going to look into this more. I'm going to investigate further. And that's okay. Like that's not bad. That's not gossip. That's wisdom. You don't just have to believe whatever you're told if it doesn't make any sense.
That's right. And that's where the prayer of like, God give us and our leaders wisdom and discernment.
Yeah.
The two have to go hand in hand.
Yes.
You can't have discernment without wisdom, and you can't have wisdom without discernment.
That's so true.
You can't.
Yeah.
Because you need both. You need both, right? And so it's like, wow. I mean, this is an ongoing conversation. This is not a one and done, because I just think that there's far too many scandals that are coming out nowadays that we're like, what can we do?
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, what I really want to talk about this was because of sadly, from a couple episodes ago, the last, like all the DMs with messages of this happened in my church, this was said to me, this is how it was dealt with.
Yeah, hundreds of messages we got.
Say to another person, another leader, this is not right.
Yeah.
They're trying to cover for this abusive situation or this infidelity or this whatever. Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep like asking for help. And that's not wrong. And if people turn on you, trust me, I get it. I know exactly what that feels like. It feels awful.
Yeah.
But you have to tell the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and you have to try to be in a place where there is accountability. Like
well, and now you and I are realizing, because the DMs and the messages were flooding after that message, to the point that I think we both sat there and we were like, like a little sick to our stomach.
Yeah.
Because it was like,
totally.
Wait a minute. Like here we are just thinking like sharing experiences, and you and I had different experiences for sure.
Yeah.
You know, mine were a little bit more on the positive side, but why? Like, why is this happening in churches? Why is this happening where this many women are writing us saying this is being put under the rug?
Yeah. And
like, it's not okay.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So it's like, we have to do something better.
Yeah. And so we just want to talk about it to almost like normalize it. Like, don't be scared.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
There's not really a sunny side to this one.
Right. I know. I guess the sunny side is just that, like, you have a voice and it's okay to be honest. And there are people in your circle. I promise you, there are people
that will
believe you, listen, and help advocate for you.
Yeah.
You just have to find them.
You have to find
them. And sometimes they're not the people they should be.
Yeah.
Sometimes it should be your life group leader or someone on your church board or a pastor. And sometimes it's not them. Sometimes it is. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
And good job if you're in those positions of leadership and you take things seriously and take action, but just you don't have to suffer in silence and feel like, well, no one cares.
Yeah. Find somebody else. Talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
Because you will find the person.
Yeah.
I think that will take it seriously and go from there and help you.
Yeah. And help you.
Oh, man. This is a heavy one.
I know. I'm sorry, guys.
And I feel like the next one is heavy too.
Yeah, it is. But
you know,
it's okay. But we're not afraid to have these conversations.
We're not. And I think that's what it comes down to is that we're two middle-aged women. Don't want to say that too loud. I'm still 39, okay?
I know.
I'm holding on.
I got a little bit to go.
I'm holding on. But like that want to have the tough conversations that not a lot of people will have.
Yeah.
So we thank you guys for sticking around and being with us along the way. And we hope that you keep listening and keep supporting, because we definitely love that.
Yeah.
And just want to have these conversations so that we can help make some changes.
Yeah.
So thanks, guys.